Hey, what's up, my fellow New World Defenders? This is Chris. Hopefully, you are enjoying your day or you're looking forward to having your night at this point, depending on where you are in the world. Um, I'm going to talk about a subject that I talk about mostly on my other channel. I figure this is for the people who are only on this channel. Now, if you want to visit my other channel, that one talks a lot about precious metals and things like that. The name is Barnone, Barnone 11967. You can go on the main page of this website and you'll see the name right there under the people who post the videos on this channel. You can just click on it. But I want to talk about why I view gold and silver as real money, and give a little brief history for those of you who may not be aware of it. First of all, gold and silver has been the primary form of exchange for currency since way back during the Roman Empire. As a matter of fact, the Roman Empire was the first to officially, by the government, um, use a coin and guarantee its quantity of silver. It was the denarius. It was approximately about the size of a dime, and it had approximately about 80% silver guaranteed with it. Now, throughout history, silver and gold were used for exchange of currency. And the reason for that is because before that, they basically traded. They did bartering, which was a wonderful idea and it kept everybody on an even level. The only problem is if you only had one particular item to trade and a person you wanted to trade for their goods didn't want what you wanted, it posed a problem. Now, in the early days, I mean, they used spearheads as a means of currency. Even further back, they used seashells as a form of currency. Basically, anything that you can imagine, spices. But the problem is, like, for example, let's say you needed to get a oxen to help plow your field, and the only thing you have to trade is wheat. Now, what if you are trading with a person who has so much wheat they don't need anymore? What do you trade? So that was always the problem, and that's where precious metals came into play. Now, gold is a measure of wealth, and silver basically is like they could say is the poor man's gold. It was used for a means of exchange. So wealthy people had gold, the average citizens used silver. Now, this has been primarily throughout history until we got to the point in the recent decades, well, probably century and a half, where we started using paper as a currency. Now, the one thing about all the way up until 1971, our paper currency was backed by gold and silver. In 1971, Richard Nixon convinced the world to get off the gold standard, and we have now what's called a fiat currency. Matter of fact, throughout the world, every currency out there in every country is a fiat currency. Now, a fiat currency is a means of exchange that is not backed by gold and silver. Now, right there, just in that definition, should show how gold and silver is real money, because they don't say that a fiat currency is something that's not backed by straws and tuna fish. You know, it says in the definition gold and silver backed. So the average lifespan of a fiat currency is approximately about 40 years. Now, if you take 1971, add 40 years to it, what do we have? 2011. Now, also, with the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, um, it started the devaluation of our purchasing power right off the bat. As a matter of fact, between that time and now, we've lost approximately between 96 and 98% of our purchasing power due to the fact of the Federal Reserve. Now, for those of you who may or may not know, and the people who do, you know, just remember this video is also for people who are not aware or watching for the first time. The Federal Reserve is not a federal owned establishment. It is privately owned by the banks. So it's not a federal government building. And a lot of people mistaken that because you see the word Federal Reserve. And there's a little saying that the Federal Reserve is as federal as Federal Express. Just because it has the word federal in it doesn't mean that it is a federal building. But of course, they use words all over the place to manipulate people. As a matter of fact, each person on their IDs and their birth certificates, you have two identities. You have, let's say your name is John Doe. You have John Doe, the human being, and John Doe, the corporation, which means each person who has a social security number and has a birth certificate and has a marriage license and all those things, for example, like a title of the house or car, it's all in capital letters, or at least your first letters of each first and last name are capitalized. It means that you are a private corporation, which we won't get into at this point, but it just shows that words can sometimes be misleading. So back to the subject. Oh, and one other thing I just want to mention, as far as if you ever realized, just to show that that the whole being a property and being a corporation, look at your birth certificate. What does that certificate have in common with, like, for example, a certificate of title for your car? They're on the same paper. So take a look at that and research it sometime. But some people got into the SLV and the GLD. That is the stocks for supposedly you make you think that you're owning a gold or silver share. It's not. It's basically, they even say it. JP Morgan, if you ask for their pamphlet of information about their company, they will say right in their words, their own words, that, for example, the SLV is an alternative way to invest in silver. They don't guarantee that they have the silver to back up the piece of paper. They make it extremely difficult to you to try and get your physical silver if you want it. There's a lot of things you have to do just to get it. And even if you pass all that and they send you silver, they don't guarantee the quality of it. In other words, they don't have to guarantee it's 0.99 pure. So if they send you a bar of tin with some silver coating, nobody's responsible for it. And here's the kicker. The silver that is being held by JP Morgan, the little that they have, is not even stored in the United States. It's stored in a bank in England. And again, it says it in their information. You can ask for it and they'll send it to you and you'll see it for yourself. So basically, it's about 100-to-1 ratio that the SLV has. And what that means is for every, let's say this is a 1-ounce paper stock of SLV, you need 100 of those just to equal the 1 ounce that they actually have in physical silver. And that's provided they have even that. So that's why you see these prices so low on the market for silver, is because it's based on the paper price, not the physical price. And because it's based on the paper, it's a manipulated market. So that's why the true value is nowhere near what it should be at this point. But I really think that the days of the SLV are numbered. Now, numbered meaning it could be within the next 2 to 5 years, it could just no longer work, or it could be the next 2 to 5 months. You know, nobody knows, but I think it's on its last legs. And that's why I think that the end of this month to the beginning to mid-July, you're going to start seeing some changes, because especially with the quarterly stock reports that are coming out, where there's going to be a lot of losses coming out due to the earthquake in Japan, because all their exports were not getting to their destinations, and companies that have, you know, like phone companies or electronic shops or auto industries, that they're not getting their necessary parts, they're going to show lots of losses, even some places shut down. So that is going to affect the price of gold and silver and other precious metals, and it will definitely affect the US dollar. So be very alert to the stock market and very alert to the precious metals prices for the next few weeks, because everybody's talking about potential collapses and things. This could be the potential start of it. Now, I'm not going to guarantee it, because nothing in life is guaranteed, but if you go by the fact that QE2 is about to end, possible QE3 is about to start, you have the quarterly reports. They don't have a specific date, but they say it's usually between 1 and 2 weeks after the end of the month. So it could be sometime in July. I couldn't tell you the exact date, but pay attention to it. And whatever distractions come up in the meantime, There's a lot of different scenarios that could really affect the price of silver. So this is a really good time to get in. Now here's another thing to keep in mind. A fiat currency, like the dollar or the euro or the yen, like I said, again, anything not backed by gold and silver, can potentially go to zero. There have been examples of that. Zimbabwe, for one, has gone into hyperinflation in their dollar. I mean, you went from a dollar Zimbabwe note to a $1 trillion Zimbabwe note. You also had, like in World War One Germany, where they had to print money so fast because they couldn't pay off their war debts because they didn't have enough gold, so they started printing extra money to try and pay off their war debts when they lost the war, that they got to the point where they were printing them so fast there was only one side of the bill that actually had the information on it. The other side was left blank. And it was so worthless that people were using it as wallpaper and to, start fires in their fireplaces. So it can happen. Now, silver and gold, on the other hand, will never go to zero. They will always have a value. Like, for example, see, this is a regular quarter. This quarter is 1984. Any quarter after 1964 is primarily copper and zinc. Mostly zinc and some copper. So it's a quarter with its metal value is only worth between 7 and 12 cents. So let's just say at its face value, it's worth 25 cents. Now, if you had a quarter that was in 1964 or below, which is 90% silver, the silver content alone would make the value of that coin roughly about $7. So there's the difference. You have a quarter that's not silver, worth 25 cents, and if you go by the absolute metal, like if the currency collapses, the metal is only worth about 7 to 12 cents. But if you have a silver quarter, the silver content is worth dramatically more than what the price is on the coin. So it shows the value. Now, one thing I want people to realize is, like, for example, in Utah, they passed a law that allows people to pay for bills, government-issued bills, with gold and silver. Now, there's one catch to that they don't really explain to people. The gold and silver is based on the numerical value of the coin, which is totally a waste of time if you think about it. So be very careful, because they may allow people all over the country to start getting to the point where, oh, you can exchange your gold and silver to pay your bills. Right now it's only government bills. Now, if you have, for example, a 1 ounce gold eagle, a 1 ounce gold eagle has a $50 face value, which means if you were to use that gold coin to pay for something, it would only be worth $50. Now, that's not including the black market or eBay or anything like that. I'm talking about paying the government with it. They only recognize the dollar amount. So the best way to pay would be with a gold bar, because it's not a government issued coin, and also there is no numerical value on it. So it would be worth the metal content, which would be at this point over $1,500. So it's good to be educated. The problem is most people are not educated because the governments, the schools, they don't teach you these things. You don't learn them. And that's how they take advantage of you. And that's why even simple terminology, if you don't know a word properly, they could take advantage of you. And that, like I said, if you look it up and you research it, they list us as corporations. And maybe one day, when people are ready to hear why, I'll make a video about all that stuff, because that rabbit hole goes further than you can imagine. But, baby steps at this point. So, if you're looking to protect yourself against the potential collapse of the dollar, and I really feel it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, silver and gold is the best way to protect yourself. Now, there's also copper and nickel, but, I mean, those are minor. They're not going to really do anything other than get some small purchases. Those are base metals. They're not precious metals, which means there's a heck of a lot more of it. So people that are investing in copper coins, I mean, you're better off saving your money for a silver coin than a bunch of copper. But if that's all you can afford, it's always better than nothing. I always say, personally, one of the easiest ways to get things like copper and nickel is just go to the bank and get a bunch of nickels. Because any year nickel has copper, and it has, of course, nickel in it. And you can exchange even money for it, so it doesn't cost you anything. Pennies are good too, but the problem with pennies is anything after mid-1982 is no longer copper. So you'd actually have to go sorting through them, which could be annoying, especially if you buy $1,000 worth of pennies. So nickels would be the best way to go if you're going to do that.